And I'm really excited. It's a great crowd here. We have a top-notch panel, and I'll ask them to join me here on the stage so I don't feel so lonely. So just get up here, and I'll introduce you briefly. Just have a seat here. And we have a very exciting topic. We'll be diving into the world of quantum technologies and how it's transforming the future of industry. As mentioned, I'm from Kvanted. We're an industrial tech. Speakers here with me. We'll start with David here, right next to me. He's a seasoned investor, CEO, and investment manager at Navigare Ventures. He holds a PhD in atomic physics, and he's focused currently on ICT, physics, and quantum technologies. Warm welcome.
Much.
Then we have Beatriz here as well. She's a research leader at Ericsson, focusing on emerging compute. She holds a PhD in engineering and physical sciences, and her current interests focus on new computing paradigms that could contribute to the next generation of mobile networks. Great to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
And then we're joined by Lorenzo. He is the managing director for UK and Nordics at the American quantum computer company IonQ, listed at the New York Stock Exchange. He splits his time, I understand, between Switzerland and Sweden, also here in Gothenburg. And previously he used to work at IBM, and he has a diverse experience on leading market expansions for multiple technology businesses in Europe. And last but not least, we're joined by Nicholas. He is straight in from another panel, jumping here to join us. He's a defense investor, a thought leader in the field with several years of experience across national security and defense tech. And previously, he's held roles in the US government, done management consulting, and he will probably help us understanding quantum as a sort of critical technology or a key enabler. And I was just listening to you on the EUVC podcast, actually, run by the excellent Andreas, and I think you'll probably have many interesting viewpoints to share how you approach, from a defense tech point of view, quantum technologies.
I'll do my best.
Wonderful. So let's get started. We had a brief together before this panel with this group, and we thought about what do we want to address. There are so many interesting angles you can take when you talk about quantum technologies. We decided we'll try to at least cover the time aspect, because it's much debated also in the media. We'll talk about valuation levels, also address the collaboration aspect between corporations, startups, how we can foster innovation through collaboration. And then we'll talk about practical use cases. What will be the first ones? And hear some insights on that. But let's start with the very basics. I'm a lawyer by training, so I love definitions, and starting off with that before you sort of dive deep into discussions. So when we talk about quantum technologies, there's sometimes some misconceptions in the public discourse, what it actually means. And broadly speaking, you can say that quantum technology covers three subfields: quantum computing, quantum communication, quantum sensing. Is this correct? Or how would you, David, approach the sort of definition of quantum? What kind of modalities should we keep in mind when we have this debate here today?
I guess that there are many different ways of achieving quantum phenomena or for industrial use, and there are many ways to use them. So modalities can either be how do you create these quantum effects that we want to explore, and the other one, where do we want to apply it. And just as a reminder, or flying into the subject, everything that actually does something useful in this room is based on quantum effects already. It's a 100-year-old theory. It's, well, apart from no one really understanding it, it's fairly well. It really explains everything. Why the sky is blue and the sunset is red, which I guess you wouldn't know much about here in Gothenburg. But no. So everything that we use as 20th century technology is based on quantum physics, but as collective phenomena. And now we are moving into quantum 2.0, which is exploring the capabilities of a single isolated, manipulated, engineered quantum system. It can be either a trapped ion or a quantum dot or a small quantum circuit submerged in some superconductor. So creating this quantum system, either natural, artificial, and then exploring them, manipulating them, it opens a new vast field of possible industrial applications. And then I love that as a physicist, and when a journalist asks me, so how will it change my life? I say, I don't know. And probably I don't care, because I know it will do so much good for all kinds of technologies. And as you say, for sensing, for measuring very small changes in magnetic fields and electric fields in gravitation. So a quantum sensor could sense the mass of the walls in this building and just detect that, yes, we are at the bottom of a very tall building. It can be used for military applications, for medical research, for maybe diagnostics, and that is already happening. Then we have the field of communications and security, where we can use the fact that photons that are created at the same time are entangled until we actually measure them, and they can in some way stay interconnected over distances of hundreds of kilometers, creating possibilities for tamper-free communication, or just creating random numbers requires the isolated quantum systems, because just to create all these, the cryptography applications that require a random number. So there are many, many different applications. And then, of course, you could, like Lorenzo and his employers, venture into combining and tangling many different isolated atoms and quantum systems to use them for calculating stuff, which I think is very ambitious. Kudos you. And there is a debate of how long that will take. But just be reminded that today we are using the strangeness of quantum theory already in sensing, in measuring, in timing, etc. So this is a revolution that is ongoing. The general public has not been informed well enough about that.
Well, now we're correcting that and
Yes,
bringing this to awareness,
much.
so that's good. Lorenzo, do you want to talk to us a bit about what IonQ is doing, what you're working on there, and do you agree that the next revolution is ongoing right now in the space of quantum?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, actually. But I do want to zoom in specifically on quantum computing and the modalities point. I think when we hear, and to address the NVIDIA CEO's comment, we hear a lot of timelines being thrown around when quantum is going to be valuable. For that, I think we need to understand there's different types of approaching quantum computation. We have superconducting, we have trapped ions, we have neutral atoms, and each of these come with different engineering challenges and different benefits. So we see them all developing at a different rate. Speaking for my company, and today we see that trapped ion is taking a leading role in being able to address problems that AI and standard compute simply can't. So things such as modeling molecular docking. These are things that are happening in a two-year time frame. We're able to prove the concepts today using today's technology, and we're able to then scale that to being relevant in the next 2 years. It allows us to do things completely differently. And I think that lack of understanding and lack of education more widely, it causes some of these reactions and some of these comments about things being 10, 15 years away. But coming to the 10, 15 years, this is a technology that will develop. And in 15 years' time, to be able to describe the value, I think it's just a little bit too big of an ask. But in the next 2 years, we will see quantum embedded in workflows through pharma, through automotive, and through energy. So I'm quite positive to it. Does that answer?
That's a good start. We'll dive deeper soon. You referred to the quote by NVIDIA's CEO, and there's been some public debate about the uncertainty of the timeline for at least widespread commercial adoption. And this has sort of also then caused some volatility of quantum companies' valuations. And also the CEO of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, suggested that practical quantum computers are still some 15 to even 30 years away. And this prompted markets to reassess then quantum valuations. Well, now we saw some interesting developments around the Chinese AI startup DeepSeek, which caused quite a stir and hit the stock prices of tech giants like NVIDIA itself. and left investors wondering what's going on here and how should we sort of assess this situation. If we talk a little bit about the valuation levels, any thoughts that you want to share on that, Lorenzo, and then we can go around the panelists.
So I think over the last 3 to 6 months, we've seen a huge amount of capital in the markets moving into quantum, not just into IonQ. We're a key beneficiary. With Jensen's comment, everybody asked me, what do I think? That comment took $5 billion off of our market cap in the space of 24 hours. But if it had said that 6 months earlier, we wouldn't have even had $5 billion of market cap. So, peace, I get it, it's an opinion, one that's not necessarily informed, could be more noise. But we see that the markets and the investors, private equity, venture capital, are moving more and more capital into quantum. Was that me? No. Into quantum. We also see that more and more companies, particularly in the US, have structured quantum programs that are now multi-years and multi-billion dollars. And we see places like the UK that have taken a very structured approach to deploying capital in key areas of quantum where they think there's near-term value to be realized. At the same time, we see some of the smaller Nordic countries potentially taking a step back. So I think it is a good time now to assess where we are with quantum, figure out what is it the markets are aware of to move so much capital into these companies and to support this research, and try and make sure we're aligned in the Nordics to that movement.
Beatriz, shall I turn to you? How do you approach this? I mean, you work in the fields of global telecoms. Mm-hmm. How do you approach the sort of value of quantum, bringing into the field where you are active, and what's the timeline that you have in mind currently? You recently published, for everyone's information, a good technology review paper earlier this year, actually.
Yes,
so if you also want to share some key takeaways from that, I think that would be very beneficial for this crowd.
Yeah. So, yeah, as you say, I'm part of Ericsson, and there we're looking a little bit into new technologies. I'm part of Ericsson research, actually, so we're looking more into the future technologies and what could be used in the mobile networks, as we say in the introduction. And one of those technologies is quantum computing. So what we are doing right now is we are exploring how quantum computing could be used in mobile networks and what we could do with it. And we have some requirements. We have the requirements that it needs to perform better than the classical computing. It needs to be easily integrated with the current systems, and also it needs to be a way of industrialization or scalable, so that we can use it in the mobile networks. So with that in mind, we started exploring, and we looked more into kind of two different directions for this. One was on how we could use quantum computing and what type of use cases, what type of applications we could have for mobile networks. And the other one was how would we integrate it into the systems. So for the first one, we see there is potential advantage to use quantum computing in mobile networks, in the control and management planes, also in some optimization problems in the radio domain. And one part that we have seen also some gain is in the training of quantum machine learning models, where we also see that there is the possibility to use less training parameters. And in that respect, we also published another blog. That result is from a year ago or 1.5 years ago. So also if you are interested, you can come to the Ericsson blog and look for it. And our results show that for a particular case of antenna tilting, I can explain it very quickly. You need to have your antenna tilted in the right way, otherwise you will create either interference or you will not have the right coverage, depending on the situation. So in order to get that, you need to train that tilt, and for that training, we realized that achieving the same level of accuracy, we needed 10 times less number of training parameters. So we see some advantage, and we see some results, some concrete results about using this technology. And then, as I said, there is the other direction about how to integrate them in the systems. And in that respect, we don't think, at least not at this moment, that it will substitute the classical computing. So So now what we are looking is into how we can integrate quantum computing with the classical computing, and we see that quantum it's good for certain type of workloads and problems. So it will be a coprocessor like we have today with the GPUs. So for those workloads, we will offload them to the quantum computing, and then we will get the results, and then we will kind of the main thing will still happen in the classical compute. So this is a little bit of what we see, but you ask about the timeline. We also see that there are challenges in quantum. Lorenzo has introduced like the different technologies. So we don't know which one will be kind of the one that we think that will be maybe most useful for telecom. So there's still a little bit of, for us, a little bit of uncertainty there. Although I'm sure that there will be a lot of advancements in the next years. We see also the noise is still a problem. There has been also a lot of announcements, for example, with the chip Willow from Google, that there is advancement in that area, but we still see that this is a problem. And then the scalability part, how we will scale all these systems and how to use them in, as I said, in more institutional area. So in terms of timeline, I don't know. Maybe it's like with this DeepSeek, right? Something happens and then there is a disruption, but we see that it will take some time. For us, we see it in terms of mobile generations. We don't think it will come in the 6G. We think it will come in later generations for the mobile communications. Yeah.
Well, in light of these challenges, as you describe it, regarding the timeline, do you think in general corporations are forward-leaning enough when it comes to, let's say, R&D budgets for quantum research?
That is a tough question.
I know.
I don't know. We see some companies and also other industries where they're looking. They're also doing explorations. So I think there is investments. If they are sufficient or not sufficient, for me it's very hard to evaluate. But I think there is something that is happening there, and also as Lorenzo has said, there are different areas that are looking automation, chemistry, etc. Now as telecommunications, I know logistics. So there's a lot of different areas that are also exploring where this could be used and how it could be used, and yeah. So I think there is some investment, definitely. Yeah.
Let's then turn to Nicholas. I mean, you're a specialist or expert in defense tech investing. So how do you approach quantum technologies as a sort of critical or strategic technology? And maybe it would be good also for this crowd to understand what you talk about when you talk about defense tech, because there's some misunderstandings, I think, in the discourse in venture right now. Some may think it really is about bombs and bolts, whereas I understand you approach it at least as more of a key enablers. But please talk to us about this.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll probably address the second question first, if I may. So I think you hit on a really good point, which for defense tech writ large, it's not about bullets and bombs. Even if it was, those aren't really venture scalable when you look at margins and a whole other slew of reasons. But we're really talking about here what we call key enablers. So technologies, solutions that help enable either the warfighter or civilian populaces to be more resilient, or in some cases, yes, more lethal in the case of the warfighter. So that's what we look at in this one. One of the complicating factors, due to a whole litany of reasons that I won't go into on this panel, there is still somewhat of a stigma around defense despite all the events of the last 4 years, particularly in Europe. The US doesn't have that same issue. There are 34 different funds in venture in the US that either wholly or predominantly do defense tech. In Europe, there are a bunch of funds now coming around that are saying they do dual use, but it's in spirit, well, it's in theory rather than spirit. When we think about defense tech rather than, hopefully that's still working, okay. When we talk about defense tech, we actually mean companies that are defense first, so that their primary markets are defense rather than backing into it as a lot of commercial entities do. And dual use is often used in Europe as a bit of a cover for that, where, hey, one time long ago, my company sold something to the MOD or DOD, Ministry of Defense or Department of Defense, thus I'm dual use. When we talk about, we mean ones that it is indeed just their primary market. So shifting gears to your first question on the side of quantum, now we can debate timelines, but at the end of the day, we work a lot hand in glove with various governments and militaries, and there's widespread recognition that this is part of that key enabler value chain, or EDTs, emerging and disruptive technologies, which is really just a catch-all for a slew of early stage to more mature technologies that help enable a broader picture. So within quantum, there obviously are a whole manner of implications. For us, we really focus on three predominant areas. The first is secure information sharing or communications. The second is ISR, or intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And third is PNT, or precision navigation timing. And when you look at those three buckets, they've been widely recognized across the US with their quantum strategy, as well as that was called the CTA strategy, or critical technology areas. Quantum was highlighted in 1.5 of those. I can unpack that if anyone actually cares afterwards. The UK actually has their own 10-year strategy, re-released back in 23 under the Sonnek government, focused on quantum as a national critical infrastructure. And then even NATO last year, back in January, released its own quantum strategy. So why are we doing this? It goes down to that key enabler point I made at the very start, which is these are solutions that are going to enable our populaces and our intelligence and other apparatus to be more resilient, but also at the end of the day that are making our warfighters, and I know this is perhaps for a lot of investors not a palatable concept, more lethal in the way they conduct operations, both in the targeting of infrastructure in the case of, say, the Russia-Ukraine war, or that could come in a great power competition. But that's really how we look at it. And those, while not fully mutually exclusive or exhaustive, those are the three main areas we tend to look at for defense. And you can see examples of this where, say, through the Office of Strategic Capabilities in the US, or through UK MOD via the British Business Bank, where MODs are and DODs across the globe are starting to make bets within their own national players because they recognize the importance of this being a sovereign capability.
You want to continue to elaborate a little bit on that? How important do you see the role of quantum vis-a-vis other key enablers, such as, let's say, drones and AI? And would it be correct to say that the nation that has quantum supremacy will sort of rule the global system?
I mean, I think there's still a lot to play for, but if we take it to its logical conclusions, being second best in this race, if it's between Western democracies and authoritarian states, it's not going to end terribly well if one of those authoritarian states are the first to achieve that. And that's why, traditionally, if you look at where even DARPA has been, over the last 3 years, DARPA has over 36 programs dealing with either near adjacencies or directly with one of those three challenge areas I just outlaid within quantum, because they recognize the importance. Now, that's not to say that we're going to achieve this tomorrow in any of these different areas. What it is saying is that there is a recognition that we need to be seeding these programs across the board, be it within DARPA in the US, be it within DSTL in the UK, or other bodies looking at this, because of the importance of reaching that first. And with regards to the other key enablers, any of the key enablers to varying degrees can have game-changing consequences on the battle space or even just in geopolitical interactions. With that said, where they become really lethal or really critical is when you marry them up together. It's the combined network effects. So you combine things like AI-enabled computer vision with quantum. That's where things get, pardon a colloquialism, quite scary.
David, any comments on this sort of merger between quantum and defense tech?
Yeah, well, I just I have a slightly complementary view. I think that we tend to be a bit hypnotized by the scale of things. I mean, the largest number, or the matrix crunching neural systems trainer, or the best quantum supremacy computer. It's really not about that. It's about the set of capabilities to master these new techniques that need to sit with a lot of people, and demystifying it instead of making it a race around billions and billions, because it's not about that. And I do admire, I mean, Lorenzo and his colleagues, they do amazing things. They're building, I mean, having a set of hundreds of trapped ions being in mixed states and intertwined with each other. That's magic. It's fantastic. But there are so many, and it's like climbing the Annapurna. and of course climbing an Annapurna, the number of these teams will have difficulties and some will die. But quantum technology and AI is also about a number of teams having access to the basic technologies. And anyone in this room could go to the Edwards catalog and buy some optical bench and some polarizers and lasers and semi-transparent mirrors, and then start off exploring the world of quantum. And it's not about magic, it's about mastering the set of new capabilities that AI and quantum opens. And also, absolutely, of course, DeepSeek is cheaper and better because the next wave will be cheaper and better, and then new scientific breakthrough will make stuff that used to be expensive and complicated cheaper. So having these capabilities opens ways for new startups. It's not about massive cost and massive investment in one direction. It's unpacking the small possibilities of these technologies, and that's. In an open democratic society, we have to have a number of scientists, a number of startups, a number of investors that take a positive, curious view on these technologies and see how can we use that.
I presume, Lorenzo, you don't disagree with this view, but anything to add?
I think it's actually, I appreciate the opening. It's one of the things that's going to make quantum, no matter modality, no matter if it's quantum sensing, quantum computing, successful. The biggest resistance to the systems moving forward is ignorance of using it, ignorance of where it can benefit. So what we're seeing is those companies that are most successful, the Googles, the IBMs, what they're doing is they're bringing quantum to everybody as simply as possible. You could go onto my website today and mess around with quantum simulators that allow you to solve these problems. But it's hard. You need a basic level of understanding. What we try to do, I think, as an industry, and this panel's a great example, is how do you bring quantum out of science fiction, out of magic? Let people know it's available now. Let people know that you may not be solving world hunger today, but you have to start using it. You have to start exploring this new, exciting area because it's new and exciting. There's no other reason needed, to be frank. So does that help to answer?
I think that's good, and that brings it to the level of the sort of industry and ecosystem. And I mean, you're doing the European expansion of your journey here in Gothenburg. But could you, maybe all the panelists in turn share some actionable advice how we could even improve the European ecosystem from the perspective of quantum innovation and investing? Maybe kicking off with Beatriz.
Yeah, I think like for us, it will be in terms of collaboration. I think that it's a subject that has been said is very exciting. It's new. Everybody's exploring it, and I think that we need more collaboration in order to make it advance. I would say that that's for us, and access to the infrastructure. I think these are the two parts. So have more collaborations, but also have access to infrastructure so that we can try out our algorithms, we can try our different ideas, etc. So I think that's I would say that this is the way for us, the way forward.
And who are the key partners you see in the setup of collaboration? Probably governments, corporations, investors,
I think
startups.
Everybody in the ecosystem, I would say. I don't think there is one particular actor that should be more active than the others. I think it should be governments with fundings, startups, investors, universities, bigger companies, etc. So it's I would say it's the whole ecosystem that needs to kind of function, and that's what we are. I think there is this platform, at least in Sweden, the QSIP, the Quantum Swedish Innovation Platform, that is trying to do that, to put all the actors together and then try to strengthen that area. Yep.
Nicholas, what would you share as sort
I
of
think Beatriz
advice?
largely took a lot of the words out of my mouth, but the idea that I'm going to espouse here is just, again, it's going to be reliant on the triple helix. This isn't a new concept by any means, but this is not, and with full apologies to my neighbor here, Lorenzo, at the end of the day, this is still going to require government being one of the main drivers of both collaboration as well as kind of longer term investment. And so it is really incumbent upon the industry as well as investors like, some of us up here, especially like David, who's much more knowledgeable than I am on this area, but to actually help make it understandable and digestible for key governments, particularly as they rotate, because this is really critical, and to actually be able to see that demand that I referred to earlier across all these different silos. The one additional thing I'll say that will make me somewhat unpopular in this room is, yes, all for collaboration. There needs to be open information sharing as much as possible between Western democracies. There are still a lot of challenges from securing a lot of these technologies and these use cases. We've obviously seen this week on the AI front, but making sure that adversarial researchers who may have, may look like collaborators on the surface, who do perhaps have less than ideal aims for what you're working on. So it's one thing to share with like-minded folks across the alliance, but also be cognizant that there are actors out there who are seeking to perhaps steal some of the ROI, if you will, from this, as well as the foundational research, though, again, not popular sentiment, I know, in certain circles.
Lorenzo and David, any last comments or advice from you before we finish off?
For my part, we have great research and great startups just here in town. Chalmers and Gothenburg University create a lot of startup opportunities. There's fairly good financing for them, but no one buys their products. So we need governmental procurement. We need large corporations that are not entrenched with the old technologies and customer bases. These startups need products, and we need to look at the US. How do we create curiosity around this? Because we have the technology, we have the capital, we need the customers.
I think the last thing I'd say, just to build on it all, is we have everything in place here. It's about private capital, it's about government support, it's about philanthropy, but it comes down to curiosity. Everybody here can go and play with quantum today. We need to encourage people to do that, and we need to give them a reason why. So play nice and simple.
It's quite reassuring to end with that we have everything we need. And I think in this room, we have a bunch of curious people who have been listening to this session. So thanks to everyone here, and a special thanks to the panel.
Thank you.